On this episode, I am pleased to be joined by Cameron Stevens. I met Cameron at a meeting of Brett Weinstein's Coalition of the Reasonable, and extremely interesting guy who was deeply involved in the Game B initiative, which we briefly discuss in this episode. And I just want to define one of the terms that we use periodically through this discussion, the multipolar trap. It's, I think you could really call this essentially a law of nature, of human nature at the very least. And it essentially says that if you have a set of rules, there's a competitive advantage conferred to the one who breaks the rules first. And that this creates a kind of race to the bottom because other players are forced to follow suit if there's no enforcement mechanism. And so this is, I think, a key concept in understanding what's going on in the world right now. And I wanted to make sure that it was understood before we begin the episode. I think you'll find it an interesting one. And here we go.
And we're off to the races. All right, so let's see, where were we?
Right, exactly. We're not going to pretend that we started here.
Right. Life is a comedy to those who think and a tragedy to those who feel. I'm going to stand by that. I don't know who the original source is on that. I know I'm stealing it, but
I kind of feel like there's an element of tragedy in the thinking as well, but definitely it hits the impact. The impact hits in the heart more.
Yeah. It's habeas corpus is not one that I thought that they were going to go. We can get around that. I really thought posse comitatus was where they were going, but yeah. So there's clearly somebody. I mean, there's somebody calling the shots who is not stupid. And then there's a lot of people executing who are stupid. Unless you put a journalist in your Signal chat on purpose, which, that would in fact be, hey, we're leaking this on purpose. That would be some 5D chess. I don't think that's...
people are desperately trying to interpret it that way.
The scrambling of... No, nothing confidential was on that call, and if it was, we could declassify it right now. And by the way, there was no harm. And by the way, nothing happened. That scrambled behavior tells me you're making this up on the fly. And of course,
or at the very least, that not everyone on that call was in on whatever that move was.
Right. Yeah, and you can always go one step further and say, but if you were a real strategic genius, you would simulate that to throw people off the scent. And it's like, okay.
There's always another, there's always another curtain you can look behind.
Yeah, that's right. You can always go one further and go, that was just according to plan. I knew you would discover my plot, and that is why. Yeah, all right.
Well, let's throw into the mix the other thing you said before we started recording, which is basically like the number of lines that have been crossed where people, some people did at pretty much every juncture throw up their hands and say, wait a second, we really got to stop this train and figure out, So that just seems to be accelerating, and I think that this relates to the game theory stuff. I think that's basically multipolar trap.
Right. And the problem with the attractor for the multipolar trap is that you let somebody into the game, and because you're a good faith player, it is hard for you to throw out a bad faith player at the point at which they need to be thrown out, which is early and vigorously.
Yeah.
The problem with that, though, is that if you say, oh, who's going to be sergeant at arms, that the job of throwing people out naturally attracts people who should not be the ones throwing people out. All of politics, the way we do it, attracts the wrong people to audition for those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, but that just indicates how far down the multipolar trap we've descended.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like where was the point where where was the last point where the game hadn't been compromised?
1971.
Gold?
No, no, I don't know what happened, but there's a website out there called "What the Hell Happened in 1971" or something like
Oh, interesting.
that
Now,
shows.
what was that the year that Nixon took us off the gold standard? It was
Um,
roughly that year.
it's the right timeline, but I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the element.
So they pinpoint it to the year. They say 71.
Yeah, yeah. They then illustrate it with 30-ish different related but not correlated graphs of, for example, here's productivity, here's working wages.
Hmm.
1971 is the point where it branches. Here is, that's the one that always comes to mind. But here is, we could pull it up and look at it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Other dimensions of.
And do they speculate on the, let's say, etiology, or is it just sort of here's a bunch of coincidences, or do they have some kind of a theory as to what precipitated it?
I think that there's still vigorous debate on exactly what was it. So yeah, 71 was the gold standard.
Huh.
It was also the San Fernando earthquake.
Huh.
There we go. All right, and I'm going to share this.
Great. All right, perfect.
There we go. Can you see it?
Yes, I see it.
So
what the fuck happened in 71?
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
graph after graph after
Huh.
graph after graph after something here, right? This was the break point.
What was that one? Gini ratios?
Let's see, Gini ratio for families. That is a ratio of income inequality.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. This is the point at which I think capitalism says, "Can we get along without those guys? Can we make them serfs again?" And
It also somewhat coincides with globalism really starting to take effect, right?
Sure.
And so you could say that
When was the OPEC the first OPEC embargo? Was that 76?
That's an interest. That kind of rings a bell because I remember us waiting in line for gas around then.
Yeah. Here's gold reserves, right? That's predictable because 71 we take us off the standard and rather than let this continue to crash, they said, okay, let's flatline that.
Well, we don't really know whether that's actually a flat line because they haven't audited the vaults in a while.
I heard a really interesting one of my, I collect conspiracy theories. Just
yeah,
fun,
I'm fond of them too. I don't believe many of them, but some of them are very compelling.
I've seen a sword forged. I know how jet fuel melts steel girders. It just has to get it warm enough that they're not that steel anymore, right? So I'm not going down that rabbit hole. But the one that I like is they've already audited Fort Knox and found that some ridiculous percentage between 80% and all of the gold is in fact gold-plated tungsten because the weight is close enough. And nobody's expected to drill into those bricks.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if that ends up being the actual case, although I'm not really confident that whatever it is that they report about such an assessment would be accurate.
Yeah.
So, it's all kind of a big guessing game.
Who watches The Watchmen is always a problem.
Well, yeah, and then you're back to the question of how do you get the malevolent players out of the game, right? I mean, not every game has a sergeant at arms, and more often than not, they are the kind of people who would be quickly turned to the other side.
Correct, because all of the political niceties that we observe are substitutes for violence, right? That's the default persuasion technique is I will beat you with this wrench until you do what I want.
Yeah, economics and politics are warfare by other means.
Yeah, yeah, and preferable, highly preferable, right? Look at what's going on in Ukraine today. I certainly don't want to have that kind of relationship with Canada.
Exactly. But, how many times can a nation participate in these types of things by proxy before it ends up coming home?
Well, personally and politically, reputation takes a lifetime to build and 5 minutes to destroy, and ours is done.
Yeah, exactly.
If tomorrow we said, okay, we need a do-over, we're going to roll back all of these things, we're going to be nice to everybody, we're going to restore the U.S. hegemony, the rest of the world is going to say, you've just shown us how fragile your role was, how easily it could go to Germany in the 30s. We're not interested in letting you be back where you were at the top of the pile, right? I'm pretty sure I think I said this a couple of calls ago with the coalition folks. The operating theory that I have is empires decay. Period. The center does not hold, and the accelerating rate of communication, the speed at which an idea makes it around the world, is the constant element in determining how long a empire or empire-like state can hold it together. So you get 10,000 years of Egypt, 2,000 years of Greeks, 1,000 years of Romans, 500 years of the British Empire, sun never setting on the British Empire, 200 years of the US. And hey, that's a pretty good run. We did all right. We advanced the ball of the documents that we put together to express what kind of a nation we wanted to be. We're pretty good, and a lot of other nations have seen them. And so that's the lesson we talk. And we're now toddling off into senescence nationwide. Yeah. because we couldn't hold it together. Ben Franklin had that bit about, hey, what'd you make for us? A republic, if you can keep it. Well,
right.
We could keep it for, what is it, closer to 250 years now?
I mean, yeah, it's arguable whether we've had it since 71.
Yeah, right. and that was that was a tipping point of some kind. So,
yeah. Well, there's this idea that a nation is essentially a group of people who have decided to believe the same lying narrative. I can't remember. It's said better than that, but
I get where you're going. Yeah.
To the extent that that's true, then the spread of information rate, I think, is a really good insight, because the lies are inherent within the system, and the more easily they're propagated, the more quickly it'll take something down.
Yeah, well, you can say that humans, one of the things humans do that other animals don't, is humans tell stories about themselves to make sense of the world. Animals have a much more straightforward existence because they're not talking about what happened after it happened.
Yeah.
The talking about it is a separate activity from what actually happened, but we pretend like it isn't. Right?
Well, we're so mediated by our own language that we've forgotten what it is to be.
It's a huge advantage, too, for coordinating, right? I can tell you what we're going to do without doing it. And then you can say, here's why that won't work. And the idea dies instead of the first people who try it die.
Right. So there, the cost benefit analysis of society.
Everything has a cost, right?
And, the dilemma of the sanctity of the individual within the framework of let's say, classical liberalism versus the functionality of organizations, right? Mm-hmm. That's been a fundamental tension within the West for our entire history.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think we're kind of we're a reaction against the overreach of the, my historical references are a little bit vague, but I'm just going to say kind of the period of nobility, right? The kings, the leadership, which seemed to have completely lost touch with the concerns of the average people. that I think was what we were reacting against, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah. I heard a really interesting summary of that earlier this week, maybe last week, as a definition of conservatism. Conservatism
Mm.
is the preposition that political divisions are real or societal divisions are real. That is,
Class?
the divine, any of them. The divine right of kings has some basis in reality other than we made that up. Castes in India, same. Um, Social classes or economic classes in the US, people are poor because they are lazy or because they are, in some way, have a moral deficit that is reflected in their bank balance. And rich people are smart. You know, we keep talking about Trump, which irritates me, but he's such a good example for, for here's what's wrong, right? He must be a genius because he's got a lot of money. Well, he was born with a lot of money. What's the best way to make a small fortune? Start with a large fortune. So, he's got insulation from
I
error
mean,
that
there's
would
a number
cripple
of
somebody.
possibilities there. I mean, it seems to me that a lot of his money has come about as a result of some questionable deals. And
Well, true, but
so
he's just a
the
stand-in for anybody with money in this example. But you're right. Him specifically, um, it would be so interesting to just shine a flashlight on how is it that you took a $25 million condo and sold it to a Russian oligarch for 100 million? Well, I'm good at making deals. Are you? Or were you the deal? Did they buy you for 100 million?
well, he's been involved in organized crime for his whole life. You
Right.
know, like his was it Roy Cohn was his
Find somebody in New York real
mentor.
estate who's not at least, two degrees of Kevin Bacon from
So
Mob Connection, right?
yeah, so there you have, kind of the nature of the game, let's say, right? And so that is the game. I mean, New York is a big board, and there's a lot of different games being played there, and they're all pretty hard scrabble.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Well,
that
and that's a
you could say
good,
that that's reality.
sure.
Like when has the game been clean? Is that just an idea? Is that like the lie that we told ourselves in order to form a nation?
It's older than that. I think maybe John Donne, somebody said all occupations are a conspiracy against the layman, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
there's some digging to be done there. I
Yeah,
see where
I
you're
think
going.
so.
Yeah, when the plumber comes over and looks at something and tells you that'll be $1,700, there's a level of trust that you need to have there that you have absolutely no basis in judgment for unless you can do some plumbing.
Right.
And there's you could spin into that with a nickel's worth of experience in that will put you in a bad position where you go, come on, that can't possibly be more than $50 worth of work, and they go, by all means, do it for $50. You know, but if he told me, hey, that's $3,000 because I gotta get pull permits and bring it to code and all of this extra stuff that you don't see that I see, well, I don't have the basis to tell him no. I have to either get three quotes and hope I got three good ones, or trust somebody.
Is this an example from real life?
Yeah, I have a fantastic plumber, as a matter of fact. I mean, I've known the guy since he was working for other bigger organizations, and he finally hung out his own shingle. And I was like, I will put your name in everybody's ear that I possibly can, because the first experience that we had was a personal connection, and the second experience was I sent him a panic text on a Saturday night
Hmm.
that my toddler son had managed to get two full rolls of toilet paper down the toilet and flushed it several times, and it was beyond my ability to snake or plunge, and
Wow.
I had to shut off the water to keep it, to stop the emergency. And he said, as it turns out, I can be there in 20 minutes. I had to get up
Wow.
on the roof, and it was
Wow.
an entire thing. But
No, that guy's a gem.
yeah, exactly. And And from that point, right, he has earned all of my business, which used to be a thing that people talked about, having earned your business, right? When it was small mom and pop shops, and I'm having a little nostalgia for an era that maybe never existed, but when there were more personal relationships and fewer monopolies, uh,
Right.
because monopoly goes down this path. I got this from Cory Doctorow. It's in shittification,
Oh
where
yeah.
when you get to a certain point, the only way you can grow is by being shitty to someone, and it follows a predictable path. First,
I mean,
you
that's another way of expressing the multipolar trap.
that's right, yeah,
Yeah.
and being able to say we've done this topic a few times, being able to say every quarter your profits must be larger is setting rules that put you into the trap. There's no escape from that point if you accept those rules, because the only things that do that in nature are like cancer, bacteria cultures, things that expand to fill all available space and then go extinct. You've chosen that biological mode as your example. If you want to be in it for the long haul, you need something like seasonality. We're going to have spring where we bring out new stuff. We're going to have summer where we really enjoy the fruits of our labor. We're going to have autumn where we harvest and prepare for the winter. And we're going to have winter where everything dies off. We pull back, we cut off what isn't working, we let the ground rest, and we get ready for the next spring, right? And
Yeah.
that means you can grow slowly over time, but not every single day. It's not an exponential curve that
Right.
ends in a catastrophic crash.
But then again, war by other means. So the civilizations which had the respect for nature necessary in order to follow those seasonal patterns, right, were vulnerable to those who would
That's right.
take an advantage and not rest during the winter
Right.
and instead go on a marauding expedition. You know
Right.
what I mean? So,
The players who abandon the balance for short term optimization definitely have a short term advantage, but they
well, in a sense, they had a longer term advantage because that mode of thinking has propagated, right? That's been essentially the way that we've been behaving since we left the garden, if you like.
well, and so to take it back to that, the speed of transmission has been slow enough that up until now, hey, that's worked out pretty good.
Right.
150 years for the US, but the next one will be, let's
It
say,
worked out bad for the gardeners on a periodic basis.
that's right.
But
So when you get to where that cycle is, well, so now we're going to get into externalities. The fact that, hey, you can't grow every uh, day, right? You can't grow every quarter bigger than the last quarter and expect to make it out of this game, um, has been an externality that didn't come due, right? People died off before they had to see um, the result of that strategy. And so if you're only caring about what happens to you, that's a pretty good strategy. You get a little bit of the,
kicking
well,
the can down the road.
yeah, you get a little of the nostalgia for, by God, we didn't do it like that in my day, so that you could see in the course of a single lifetime how things had changed. But, for most of that arc of history, it's my life and my grandfather's life look pretty much the same. And so now we're getting down to where you're seeing those changes inside of a single lifetime. Maybe we will notice it, and maybe we will transition to something better, and maybe we will have an extinction burst and then expire.
I mean, there's all kinds of forking possibilities, but it does seem like once you get to the point where the primary solution to the problem is to extend the debt ceiling, it's
Right.
kind of hard to imagine how the run is going to go much longer.
Yeah. This is if you look at what scales this pattern plays at, to build yourself a nice fractal array. When you are applying for new credit every week because you cannot afford to pay off your credit cards, you're in a bad spot. Does that sound like anything we're doing at larger scale? I'll wait for the audience to catch up with me. Right?
Yeah, I mean, not only are we uh, going deeper and deeper into a debt situation, but we're sending our money elsewhere that probably. So Julian Assange said basically that the forever wars are money laundering operations,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And so we're essentially squandering the stuff that could have been used in order to stop the debt cycle.
Well,
And
yeah.
they're siphoning off the last remaining value of it, using it for, I would imagine, projects elsewhere.
Yeah. Well,
you know?
the answer to where, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. Where the hell's my Jetsons flying car? The answer to that is we shot it up in Afghanistan. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
There is some truth to innovation happens in wartime, because look at what Ukraine is doing with drones, right? Drone warfare was not a thing when Russia invaded. Uh, it is now,
Not on this scale, yeah.
and yeah, I mean, World War One had observer planes. World War Two fought in the air. We're now at, hey, we just crossed from World War One into World War Two on the drone front. Expect that technology curve again. So we'll see, drone carriers are already a thing. The
Right.
Unmanned ships that were doing suicide runs are now running in with a 6-pack of drones, dropping off their drones, hitting 6 targets, picking up their drones, and going back to refuel.
Wow.
So, I mean, props to
Yeah.
those guys. I've been to Ukraine and I've done some teaching of, I say young, but yeah, 25 from where I'm sitting is still young men and women,
Huh.
or who were moving into technology and doing a bang up job with software. And I'm sure all of those people are now um, focused on, hey, how do we get these invaders out of our home?
Right. When were you over there?
I've been twice. Well, I've been in 2 different eras. I went in 1989 when it was still USSR, and then visited Kiev and Russian areas around the Black Sea, Sochi and Rostov and Moscow and Leningrad on a student exchange program, and then went back as a technology professional in 2008, 9. Is it?
Has that been an area of the world you've been interested in for a long time?
No, it just I just happened to have an opportunity that took me there, and
Huh.
it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite. I've got a big Rand McNally map on my wall with pins in all the places where I've gone and done business or vacationed or spent a night, and so I'm always looking for a new place to go and visit. And if I had it to do again, I'd absolutely go back to Ukraine. It's fantastic.
I've heard it's incredibly beautiful. But yeah,
It is. It's green and brilliant, or it was. I mean,
right.
Kharkiv is where I was teaching, and it's been blown to shit. So
Yeah.
a lot the guys I was working with there had the ability at the time of the invasion to say, we also have an office in Portugal. Everybody who can move and wants to move, we will find space for you in the office in Portugal and
Wow.
housing. And so we got out as many people as we could, and a lot of people got out ahead of the worst of it,
Huh.
but not everybody. I mean, the women obviously had better fortunes getting out of the country than men who were expecting to be drafted into the armed forces.
Yep.
But yeah,
So this is a business that you've been working with for a while that has offices over there.
it's a client that I've done a whole lot of business with. Yeah.
Very interesting, and it's on the educational front.
Well, what I was doing was educating. It's on the technology front. I was teaching people how to do business analysis and how to diagram business processes and take clients from a here's what we're trying to do and here's where we'd like to get to okay, here's what you're doing now. Here are the feedback loops that are not getting you there. Let's trim these off and replace them with people, process, technology that moves you in the direction that you want to go.
Right. What do you think about the consequences to the technology sector here in the US right now?
Well, I will believe that manufacturing is coming home when I see that happen. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's the stated goal, and the stated goal for these guys never happens. An
Right.
excuse for why that wasn't really the goal happens, and you can take that as, oh, they were misdirecting you masterfully, or they haven't got a fucking clue. But you know, when you hit me with 100% tariffs, I'm no longer looking at, hey, how do I save this? I'm cutting that branch and saying, okay, what else have I got that I'm good at?
Right.
I heard that some car companies like Nissan are canceling orders for in the U.S. for cars that are being built in Mexico. Just
Hmm.
sorry, we're not going to fulfill that. And that's the first step of, well, what I told Brett about, right? That's the first step of saying this game is no longer fun. I'm not going to play with you, which is reputational crash, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, they were having difficulty keeping the lots stocked with some of the Nissans and Toyotas for years now, right?
Yeah, and the
And,
prices are already ridiculous.
yeah.
How are you going to put another 50, 60% on top of that?
If they were really going to do this, they would have had to gear up for it for a couple of decades.
Yeah, and you know, I said also on the coalition call, I think Trump and company are speedrunning the end. They're doing this on purpose, knowingly crashing the well, whether he's actually the thinker behind it or not is a separate discussion, and I don't think he is, but whoever's calling the shots is crashing the economy on purpose in a way that I have seen in hostile takeovers in business for years and years. You get a couple of guys on the board, they make you do bad things to your customers, they crash the value of the company so that they can acquire the rest of it for cheap. Then they spin off all the debt to another organization, keep the pieces they want, and they got your company for pennies on the dollar.
And they probably made a killing on it on the way down because they probably shorted it.
Because they shorted it on the way down too. That's right. That this is market manipulation from my perspective, and not shocking.
Disaster capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I'm always compelled to say it's not like the left is not guilty of it. You know, Rahm Emanuel is the one with the quote, "Never let a good crisis go to waste."
Right.
But they've never done it to this degree.
I kind of feel like they're hand in hand on so many of these things. You know, I mean, Trump used to be a Democrat. You know, and it seems like there's a lot of people who are perfectly happy to play ball with either side.
Well,
And
speaking of playing ball, have we talked about the sports analogy for politics?
I don't know. I don't think
So,
so.
so I use this as a model, with a nod to George Box. Uh, People in America think that they're on the red team or the blue team. They're sitting in the stadium, they're watching the red and the blue team move the ball back and forth, and they're cheering when their team moves the ball. They're not on the team. They're in the stands.
That's right.
They're just fans of the Republican or the Democratic team. The guys on the field, up until this past couple of years, have been professionals who consider each other professional rivals, right? There's some respect for the guys on the team from both sides.
Colleagues, really.
Really. And
Yeah.
and they know that their job is to make as much excitement happen on the field as possible so that the people in the stands continue to buy seats. The game is owned by the guys in the boxes behind the smoked glass.
Yeah.
And their job, their scoreboard is not what's the score at the end of the game. It's how many seats were filled and how many concessions were sold. So it's not Team Red versus Team Blue. It's Team Green against everybody else. And so if you don't have
Team what against everyone else?
Team Green.
Green. Oh, yeah, okay.
Green being money in this case, not environment.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a number of other possible games. It's hard to say.
Sure, it's a model and therefore wrong, right? But it's useful in explaining a lot of the behavior that we see. This is not meant to. Well, the CIA has a phrase that they use. They call a fundraiser when a disaster is allowed to happen, so that the department responsible for preventing that gets funding.
Right. Perverse incentives.
It goes in the category of firefighter arsonists, of which there are many.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if that's what your business is and there are no fires to put out.
Right.
You know, that's one of the problems with the supply and demand model.
And you're right. It's perverse incentives. It's just another instance of, if you pay a cop bonuses based on how many tickets he writes or how many people he arrests, stopping crime is no longer his goal, or
Right.
preventing crime is no longer his goal.
Yeah.
His goal is letting the crime begin and then stopping it in a visible way.
Yeah, I guess, it depends on, he could play a number of different roles, He could be a facilitator of the crime. That's the most profitable mode, right?
Right.
And so, quite often they may be the ones who are preventing the punters from gaining access to what happened at the crime.
Yeah, you're familiar with the Cobra story?
No.
The Cobra story is because I do a lot of business consulting, I'm chock full of little anecdotal stories that illustrate a point that I'm going to then use against you later. And this one is, it may or may not in fact be true, but it's a good illustrative story. I always like to say, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. But sometime during the British Raj, the regional governor decided there are too many damn cobras in India. What are we going to do? We can't possibly mobilize enough troops to catch every snake. We're going to put the populace to work catching them for us. I'm going to pay a bonus of $2 per snakehead, and we're going to let them just wipe out the cobras for us. Well, it took 6 weeks before they saw a peak and then a drop and then a stronger peak. In 6 weeks, people had started breeding cobras in their basements to cash in for the $2 bounty, right? And so when somebody talks about the Cobra effect, that's the story they're referencing.
Yeah. And, that's a good illustration of unintended consequences. Leadership tend to be somewhat removed from the tangible operations within everyday life. And so quite often they're the last ones to realize what is just pretty obvious when it comes to a consequence.
Well, and that's another illustration also of a complex adaptive system being treated like a deterministic system.
Yeah. So there you have your complexity versus complicated versus complexity, right?
Right. You've assumed that this is complicated, that it's going to take work to get all the cobras, but all the cobras can be gotten, and that the cobras and the catchers are not going to do anything different after you enact your plan.
This fundamentally suggests that the strategy that you were talking about originally, which is essentially the observation and respect for natural cycles, will ultimately prevail in the end, right? Because it's the effort to control as if the system were complicated, right?
Right.
That is fundamentally misguided, that produces all of these externalities, and which ultimately ends up taking the whole thing down.
Right.
So in some ways, the system will fundamentally naturally correct to the extent that there's natural cycles to work with.
Yeah, I make this argument with folks who are concerned about what we're doing to the planet. The planet is gonna be fine. We may
Right.
not be on it, but the
Right.
planet will outlast us in this event. It has extincted 95% of its living things 5 times, and it's now,
Was it 5 times?
I think it's five, and it's now going
Huh.
for six. So
Yeah. Huh. And that's an interesting number too, 95%. So there's 5% that made it through each one of those crunches
yeah,
repeatedly.
yeah.
The microbiology.
I got to pull the source on that, but yeah, in each one, the tree of life gets violently trimmed of several branches, and
So
so,
back down to the root of the bacteria in the archaea.
well, no, I mean sharks have made it through like three of these.
Wow, yeah.
Sharks are in pretty good position there. Crabs also do quite well through extinction events.
Huh. Interesting.
But you know, we owe our lives to one of them. Where mammals were not going to rise to the ascendancy that we find ourselves in, while the dinosaurs were still stomping around, controlling the climate.
I'm not entirely sure that proliferation should be associated with ascendancy.
Well, true, but we certainly have the biggest lever to change the environment around us.
Well, but we don't seem to know how to control the thing.
Right, exactly. We're a toddler walking around with an AR-15.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, well, and we're surrounded by decision makers who have no long-term vision. Just a complete inability to think about second and third order effects, and also a distinct lack of care about, well, that's 2 generations from now. Meh.
I think, unfortunately, that probably most of them are not really making the decision.
Right.
I think the extent to which blackmail plays a role in the functioning of our government and many governments around the world is, way greater than one would think.
Yeah, governance is a very different thing from stewardship.
Yeah, and power is a very different thing from governance.
Right.
So, it looks to me like the most powerful interests have essentially seized control over many, if not all, of the governments of the world, and that they have some kind of an objective. And it's not clear to me whether this is one or more than one. I imagine there's competing powers at play, but it's pretty clear that governments have lost control over their own governance.
Yeah, I mean that's the capture argument, right? It's that the government as a whole is now completely in service to money.
Well, yeah, money or the threat of annihilation, you could say.
I don't see a lot of work being done against annihilation. I really see speed running in that direction instead.
Well, yeah, I was just speaking about the preservation of each individual politician, their own self-preservation, so that
Sure.
annihilation potential, or the annihilation of, let's say, an agency, that also has a self-preservation type of instinct. And so,
Yeah.
It's a carrot stick thing. It's like, yeah, you can take the money, or we could shut down your functionality.
Yeah, there's a scene in, I want to say, Silicon Valley, but I could be retconning that where the money guys show up to the scrappy technology guys meeting and say, listen, either you guys are going to walk out of here extremely rich, or we're going to completely destroy you. Your call. And that's the choice, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of power players who have the resources necessary to make good on those.
Right.
Both sides of it.
Right. And not nearly enough holding them back. There's no pressure against them. So you see the kind of behavior that we see in the news, which is, I'm going to do more and more and more outrageous things until I get pushback. And then I'm going to take a half step back and consolidate. And then I'm going to do some more outrageous things.
Well, I'll take a half step back, blame it on someone else, and then consolidate.
Yeah, but
like I'll take one of my guys who was primed for taking the flak for some kind of a decision that had enough pushback for it to be worthy of note, right? And that's their job. Their job is fall guy, and it's a job that pays really well.
Sure.
And you don't have to do much, really. You just have to be hated. It
depends, because you never know what kind of a story you're in. If you've got a good faith relationship with a bad faith actor, you could find that, hey, yeah, I'll be the fall guy, and then you're left in prison to rot instead of getting that sweet presidential pardon. Right.
There's no guarantees once you're operating with these dudes.
Right. Or it could be that you're the Lee Harvey Oswald, which is, hey, we're going to put you up in the window with a gun. All you have to do is look out and hold the gun.
Right.
Somebody else is going to do the assassination. And then you find out later, wait, you're pinning it on me?
Right.
That's not the fall guy I agreed to be. Right. And again, conspiracy theory, right? I was hoping that the JFK files would have more stuff in them, but everything interesting has been redacted.
There have been a couple of interesting things that have come up. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy. Wait, my wife is making sign language at me. What's that? I don't know. We're probably going to go another what?
Until you have to go? What?
Okay. Yeah, we're going to go another half hour, it feels like. Okay.
The fact that you're signs that means we don't have that much time left. So honor that.
Well, that is one of the things that I think we're both worried about.
Yeah, well, true on all scales.
On all scales. I mean, comedy, right? But it's all funny until it really hits, and then I don't know. I think the Game B thing was a brilliant initiative. It's difficult to envision precisely how something, within the context of a civilization that has made so many bad decisions, the idea that somehow or another there's an idea with enough power to reorganize this thing, I think we're down to local level stuff, and even then it's kind of sketchy, Well,
let me reframe that for you. The only thing that will get us out of this is an idea. That is,
I agree with that.
If everybody says what's going on right now is okay, or there's nothing that can be done about it, and I'm just going to keep my head down.
Well, there's nothing that everybody's going to say.
That's right.
There was no way to get agreement.
That's right. So the out on this is we have to get to a breaking point at which the ants say we're not going to take this from the grasshoppers anymore. And I hate this, but it makes me a Marxist. Because if you read Marx and Engels, the tone of Karl Marx was not, hey, you can be a communist, this is what you do. The tone of Karl Marx was, I think this is the arc of history. It's going to happen inevitably because the capitalists are eventually going to burn themselves out. They will have done everything good they can do, and then they will do everything bad they can do. And then the rest of humanity will say, well, that's enough of that shit. he wasn't really advocating for a movement. He was trying to describe where he thought humanity was going. And he may be right, but he may be.
I think, like most incredibly perceptive analysts, he diagnosed the problem very well, but the solution, I think, maybe not so well.
Yeah, I don't think that he necessarily described, hey, here's how it will be once that happens well. But I think that he got the dynamic of, basically he had the first run of, this is what enshittification looks like.
Yeah.
And they're powerless to escape it under that model. So it will blow out its own flame. It will eat itself.
Yeah. But I mean, in a way, you could say that's the case with natural systems too. They run their course. They get to the point where they're no longer sustainable. They essentially decay from within,
Well, usually they reach equilibrium, and that takes them a long time, right? You get too many deer, you get more wolves. More wolves means fewer deer. Fewer deer
Sure.
means fewer wolves. So, that there's a balancing act there. It ebbs and flows. Again, seasonality, but
Yeah.
it reaches an equilibrium until you get something huge that disturbs it from the outside.
Yeah. I mean, if we wanted to make a longer run of it, then we would have been more careful about our attunement to the seasonality of things. But under the kinds of competitive circumstances that we found ourselves
Right.
with a limited amount of terrain and a lot of competition for resource, competition to maintain technological edge, because of the threat of being decimated otherwise.
And no downward
You know,
pressure against people who said, I want mine now and I'll do whatever it takes to get it. Enough of those won that it makes that a survival trait, right? So,
well, that again is that is basically saying I don't care what the rules were, I'm going to get mine now. How do we cut to the chase here at this game? Which is basically like what rules can we dispense with?
right.
So that's a dissembling of the idea that held it together.
Yeah, yeah. So back to where the center never holds, right? No matter
Yeah,
how well you order it to begin with, we have this well, critical mass at which the organism is too large to support itself,
right.
right? And so that gets to collapse. So ways around that, right? The organic way around that is to crash and go extinct or take generations to build back to where you were. The whole Game B premise was we see this coming. What is possible to do to soften that crash? We did not anticipate somebody intentionally speedrunning the crash. But in any case, Game B did
Well, the accelerationists have been at it for a long time,
Right, right.
Yes.
Game B did what it needed to do, which is it put that idea out into the common space, right? It put that idea out into the sea of mimetic thought, and I've had people come back to me with describing Game B, not knowing, know it, lady, I wrote it, right? I was there when that name was coined, and the fact that it's come back to me on the sea of dialogue is fantastic. It means it's
Oh yeah, that must feel great.
as an idea on its own, having children ideas, which is all it could be hoped for, right?
Right.
What I'd really
So now it's in
the
the
zeitgeist.
collective
Yeah.
consciousness. Yeah, the zeitgeist. That's a better word.
And if I had my druthers, I'd be able to point to some examples, some more examples of, hey, that's in the right direction. Actually, Mark Cuban has a Mark Cuban's cost plus 15% drug company, which is a very Game B idea. I'm not competing against big pharma. I'm taking all of the things that are in the public domain that I can do generics of. I'm producing them and I'm charging 15% over my costs to produce them. So one of the tools that I use for, hey, how would you Game B a given industry is it doesn't have to be nonprofit, but what would this industry look like if it were not for profit, right?
Right.
Be in the business of doing if you didn't, secretly every business in America is in the game of finance. It's in the, what can
Yeah.
we do to make money, right?
Some of them just converted entirely over to finance, like
Right,
a
right,
GE,
right.
like basically turned into a finance company,
Well,
right?
the fact that General Motors makes more money on their
GM. That's what I meant. Yeah.
finance division than selling
Yep.
cars is, that's the problem right there.
So I think the idea that you're talking about is precisely the kind of thinking that's going to be necessary if there is any hope of actually returning manufacturing to the United States.
Yeah.
The idea that you're doing it in order to make a killing, in order to make a profit,
Right.
really has to be completely eliminated from the calculus when you're doing a business plan.
Yeah.
You just want to know whether or not it's a viable business. 15% seems fair.
If you were interested in making cars and you said, look, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the engineering and on the driving experience. We're going to make the best looking, best feeling, best performing cars in the world. And we don't care if we make a profit on it at all, right? The capitalist says, well, you'll go out of business. But the purist says that's what a car company should be doing. right?
Yeah.
So I'm way over on this side in terms of businesses that I support the idea of, right?
Yeah.
This puts you in the extinction cycle, in the crapification cycle.
Right. So in some ways, the tariffs create the environment within which that readjustment theoretically could occur.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you don't have protection against the companies that are doing it uh, in a way that will make it impossible for you to do it on a better basis.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I'd crystallize that idea as all you had was your reputation, and you sold that for money. You cannot
Yeah.
get that back now, right?
Well, that's kind
So,
of Donald Trump's life story.
well, that's true. Right. Yes, that is true. So, well, that's what I meant when I said, the idea that an arch capitalist is going to navigate us out of end stage capitalism is.
I mean, he's not even really an arch capitalist. He's kind of like the guy who played the arch capitalist on TV. That's what he is.
He really is a reality TV star masquerade.
Yeah, that's what he's an entertainment dude.
Yeah.
He's professional wrestling, and the whole damn thing is kayfabe.
But he's a useful idiot. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know to what extent he's an idiot. At this point, it doesn't matter because he's just like the guy. You know what I mean?
I mean, politically, he's a useful idiot.
He's an incredibly useful player on the board.
It's a Russian
whatever.
term.
He's a trump card.
The Russians coined the term "useful idiot" for we don't even have to pay this guy, and he's doing things that are helping us out because
that's right.
Because we put a girlfriend in his apartment that keeps telling him Russian ideas, and he just repeats it. Right? Not Trump specifically, but that's their KGB terminal terminology. Thank you.
Yep.
So yeah, he's for everybody who has come in contact with him, right? I'd like it to be something other than this, but it looks like whoever the last one who talked to him was, that's whose agenda he's trotting out today. Laura Loomer walks into the office with a list of people she thinks are woke. He comes back out and fires all those people, right?
I mean, Jeffrey Epstein said, supposedly, there was a recording of him saying, supposedly, that Donald Trump's greatest gift is to basically make whoever the hell it is he's talking to think they're the most important and beautiful person in the world.
Yeah.
And he'll say he knows exactly what to say in order to make that person very happy at that moment.
Yeah, well,
it's and then it's on to the next person.
There, right? There's no there, and there's no memory.
It's entertainment.
Now, Epstein, I think, is an interesting character. I think he was running a CIA honeypot with Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father was doing the same job for the Mossad. So
I think it was all Mossad.
Maybe it was all Mossad, but I'll never know the inside story on that either. So I just have to get used to being
I don't know either. I mean, we're all just guessing, but it does seem like Trump has the most Zionist administration in U.S. history at this point.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
So, and it's not as if the Democrats haven't had their fair share either, So
they're both their unifying theme is none of them have the moral fortitude to say, I will not take money from corporations or lobbyists, right?
Yeah, I mean, the money is the way that they loosened everyone from the principle.
Right. They used to call those bribes, and now we've got 100 different ways that they're not bribes. But anybody who knows what a bribe is going to look at that and go, okay, wait. So if you issue a favorable ruling from the bench and I give you a $2 million RV as a gratuity, as a thank you after the fact, that's not bribery. Right. What game are we playing here, really? We've just dropped all the premises.
It's just business, man.
Right. There is no scorecard except for money, and that gets you results where
there are other scorecards, but the money is Essentially, it's the currency that allows for the flow of action to occur.
It's the denomination of
I mean,
right?
It's all made up digits anyway, right?
So
Certainly since 71.
That's right. That's right. It's all fiat currency. So your imaginary points versus my imaginary points, right? That's why the internet it works so well, because it's purpose built for having people trade back and forth imaginary awards.
Yeah. Yeah. The extent to which the attention economy functions in this process of degeneration, I think, is, a big part of the story. And it's difficult to come to terms with it because in many respects, I think a lot of us have felt that this is the domain within which change could occur, because of what we normally think of as what a communication device is.
Yeah, sneering at it for being wrong, it is one reaction, and that's okay. But there's a deeper X indicating where to dig, which is, hey, something about this is hijacking our biology. There's a biological function that has worked pretty well to keep our species alive this far. And something about the way that we're interacting online is tweaking that in a way that makes the body think, oh, that's good. That's a pointer for something useful and true that it would be good to know.
I think this gets to an idea that I've been very interested in for a long time, which is that we may be, on a social level, recapitulating what happened in ancient evolutionary history, in the sense that cell collectives would specialize and be able to perform certain functions. So you could say that's roughly analogous to a culture, And then over the course of time, there would be these symbiotic relationships that would establish between different cultures, different cell collectives. And as a mediator of those exchange, there would be this kind of middleman. And the middleman was essentially the network, essentially the nervous system. And over the course of time, the nervous system took hold over these cell collectives and put them to its primary interest, right? And so then you have the sort of formation of a so-called higher being. And that, of course, would explain why, let's say, the organs of society, their personal interests are less and less important to the priesthood, if you like, the ones who are controlling the information.
Yeah.
And I think
my mitochondria know or care what I'm doing.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff about mitochondria. Apparently, they have their own communication system.
That's interesting.
Apparently they are able to communicate with one another throughout the body.
I got that idea from Madeleine L'Engle when I was 12.
Huh? But, how's that?
It's in her Newbery Award winning trilogy. The A Wrinkle in Time is the first one.
Yeah, I love that book.
A Wind in the Door, A Swiftly Tilting Planet. Wait, is that C.S. Lewis? Anyway, with that trilogy, she had in one of those books a deep dive into the body and into the culture of mitochondria, singing and worshiping the host organism. That's
really interesting.
A beautiful description at the time and had no use for until you threw that in front of me just now, and it connected and made a spark.
Well, Lynn Margulis has this theory about the development of the eukaryotic cell, where she talks about the mitochondria essentially being a remnant of archaic bacteria, that they were fundamentally producing oxygen as a result of their, I think it was some sort of, I can't remember what the reaction is, but basically oxygen was their effluence. And so the atmosphere was essentially created by the effluence of this microorganism, which was proliferating all over the planet. And that effluence was toxic to them. And so they increasingly sought refuge in each other. And essentially, like, one penetrated the other. You could say that's perhaps the first sexual act, if you like. And the one that on the inside became the mitochondria, the one on the outside became the cell boundary, and the mitochondria developed this new way of converting oxygen into a usable energy source, in essence.
That's pretty interesting. I heard that story with blue-green algae, but it didn't have the eukaryotic cell at the end of it. So, that's yeah.
The blue-green algae do that kind of interpenetrating dance?
No. Just
okay.
It just found a way to survive and created oxygen and filled the atmosphere with it as a complete byproduct, which then made an environment where all the things that were doing well couldn't, and you've got a 95% die-off.
I mean, I think that is in some ways the basic pattern of life. You know, it's kind of expressed in the five element theory. You know, that the fire is a metabolic process which produces a byproduct which will fundamentally continue to collect to the point where new structures will form from it.
So that's where we started before we got on this call. I mean, the conversation started with that five element framework that you sent me that was very interesting. I would definitely like to see that as it develops. But the thing that I find connects most with that is that they exist in a kind of a scissors, rock, paper equilibrium. That is, the cycle of actions and products proceeds through all five elements and returns to where it started. So it's a cycle, not and then fire burns absolutely everything in the world to the ground. And
right. The thing is that, cycle is a tough thing because I think it's better thought of as a spiral because it's not repeating the same configuration of matter. Yeah. Like matter is being transformed. And so you're having novel forms each time around.
Yeah. So cycle in the sense of completely repeatable, definitely not. But in terms of cyclical and balanced, right? That's an equilibrium like we were trying to describe earlier, like seasonality, right? You don't.
Well, I think we could think of it as a repeating progression that describes an evolutionary process, but the extent to which there's actual equilibrium, I mean, in some ways, I would say that this is by definition not equilibrium. That the thermodynamic process. Yes, there's energy conservation in that sense. It's equilibrium, but you're getting a very different thing on, at the beginning and end of a process. Yeah, and
so instead of equilibrium, maybe we can use balance, or maybe there's another word out there that describes it better. But it is in stark contrast to the runaway exponential growth curve and then crash.
Yeah. I mean, it provides us with opportunities for rebalancing. I mean, that's literally how the Chinese medicine practitioners think of it. So by understanding the interrelationship of the different elements, you're able to identify places where there's excess or deficiency. Mm-hmm. You can tonify the deficiency and you can release the excess. So you can either kind of try to bring something up that doesn't have enough activity, or you can try to dampen something that's hyperactive. And that's basically the entire philosophical premise for the five element technique.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. It's not something I have a lot of experience with, so I'm interested to hear more.
I have a rant that I recently popped out of my head the other day about five elements. Maybe I'll try to turn that into a video in the next week or so, and I'll send it to you to see what you think.
Okay, good.
So, what do you think of the coalition of the reasonable? If we release a conversation, we don't have to make this part of the release if.
Oh, I don't mind. If you want to share this with them or with anybody else. I mean,
Okay.
I try to always speak in such a way that I can stand behind what I said. I may be wrong, but it's not a I wouldn't want to for those words to reach these particular ears.
Great.
I don't have the memory to keep track of.
That's why honesty is the best policy,
right? So
yeah.
So if you want to,
honesty phrased, elegantly, let's say.
yeah, if you put it on TikTok and I look like a jackass, well, what can I say? Those words did come out of my mouth.
Is there anyone who doesn't look like a jackass on TikTok?
I haven't seen one yet. Maybe animal videos. I don't know. But yeah, you're welcome to share it with the coalition, or dice it up and edit it and put it into anything else that you want to do with it. I'll give you free license to use the material.
All right, I'll probably just post it to the podcast. I have a podcast called Assembly of Silence, okay. So I'll stick it up there and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on, because you've been with the Coalition of the Reasonable for a long time, right?
I've been on for maybe a year. And yeah, I know Brett real well from back in the Game B days, which is 2012, 2013. And that makes me think that actually it had to be later than that I was in Kharkiv.
How did the Game B project come about?
Jordan Greenhall, who has now gone back to his original name, Jordan Hall, and Jim Rutt put that together. They knew each other from the Santa Fe Institute and grabbed a handful of people that they thought would be useful for working on this problem. We see the imminent collapse of society as we know it. All of these things that are bad for coherence are accelerating. Is there a way that we can get enough smart people in a room and come up with a plan to slow or cushion the crash so that the best things that we have, the baby, if you will, do not get thrown out with the bathwater when this event, which we can see on the horizon, makes it to the present time. And
so, yeah, maybe it looks like the accelerationists have won out, perhaps. And so the question might be more of a Harry Seldon kind of question. How do we get through the period of darkness that's to follow as quickly and elegantly as possible? Right.
And in the parlance of that group, that's rendered as a fitness landscape. Have you seen one of these 3D graphs of a given environment where different entities are going to inhabit the landscape based on their ability to climb to fitness peaks? Sometimes you are on a less than the highest peak. And to get anywhere that is better, high is better and low is worse in this model, you've got to do a valley crossing, which means you're at the peak of a hill, but not the best hill. You can't climb any higher on that hill. You've got to go all the way down into the valley, trudge through the swamp to get to the next adjacent hill, if you can see where it is.
Yeah.
You've got intelligence that tells you there is a better hill that way. That valley crossing is still perilous. If you don't have that vision, then it's a complete crapshoot. There's no guarantee that you're not already on the best hill, right? So it's really hard to convince an organism that's doing well that a valley crossing, where it has to throw away everything it's done to get itself to this peak predator status, is a good idea.
It's also quite possible that the valley might be a preferable place to be for a while, particularly if the people at the peak are, having a fight.
Well, yeah. Sure.
Like in the condition of the War of the Titans,
right. You could have a situation where, it's a metaphorical peak in this case, but where something's happening that's going to degrade the quality of that peak even further than where it is. So you don't want to stay in the valley. The valley is by definition not a comfortable place to be. But
let's say, for example, like one of those peaks is technological capability, right? So to what extent is maintaining that technological edge the correct way of thinking about how to proceed forward?
Yeah, yeah, that is a non-trivial problem to solve, right? You're talking because you've got humans involved. You're talking by definition about a complex adaptive system, and anthrocomplexity is a special form of complexity where even before you do something, the environment around you is anticipating what could you be thinking of and making plans to compensate for it.
Right.
There's the direct competition as well as incidental competition, as well as things like, the crab pot dynamic. I don't know what you're doing, but I don't understand it, and I don't want you to get it.
Right.
So, we call that "fuck that guy." And
Right.
there's
Exactly.
then there's you've done something in the past that makes me want to resist your doing anything better, even if it's good for me, which we call "fuck that guy" in particular. And it's a problem that we have not done a good job of solving historically. Historically, we've let the loudest and most confident voices drive the narrative and taken the narrative as a proxy for the measurable results. So that's declared. That story is called "Declare Victory and Get the Hell Out," regardless of the facts on the ground.
Well, I think then we're kind of back to this question of who are we talking about when we say we?
Yeah.
Because if we're talking about the civilization at large, then to, like, again, repair something that is this screwed up on every level just seems, I don't know that we can talk about that, right? So then if we're talking about some other we, the question, without even trying to define who we are, it does kind of pose sort of an interesting blank slate to work from. Is the technological dimension part of what we should be working on? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a fork in the road here, right? Mm-hmm. And so clearly there's a tremendous amount of interconnected tooling in order to produce the kind of top tier technical results that are happening on the planet right now. Mm-hmm. Are we even anywhere near being able to play in that domain? So my sense is no.
Well,
pretty clearly no.
That's right.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
There were some pretty well connected technologists in those meetings, and still we were in this position of, but the biggest levers in the domain of America, let's say, are still not all in one room and are unlikely to want to all play on one team. So part of what we're fighting is, you can address this problem as a fractal landscape, right? At the level of humanity, we're talking about the great filter. Are we or are we not going to extinct humanity? At the level of America, you can talk about, are we going to lose the great democratic experiment that is America? At a family level, we can talk about, is the landscape such that we're going to go broke and be homeless? And it works at all those scales. It's the flavor of the problem is the same.
Each one of those pieces that loses its purchase is going to make it difficult at any level of scale to put something together.
Right.
So, however, it's interesting, thinking about kind of the, let's say, nonprofit model of corporate structuring, mm-hmm. and what looks to be a very real possibility that U.S. tech is getting screwed right now.
Well, it's a valuable question to ask. What would the engineering do if money were not the necessary outcome?
Yeah.
And it
seems like there might be an opportunity if you have enough disgruntled upper management in tech to discuss these ideas.
Yeah.
And a sense of repurposing.
Yeah.
Because in a certain sense, if we're going to take this model of the network as being essentially the center of command in a complex civilization, kind of a superorganism type of thing,
Mhm.
and that right now the nodes are the organs of society are incoherent because the well the technical the network isn't doing the job of coordinating properly.
Yeah.
And this is where it really gets to be problematic, because when we're thinking about this from the point of view of a liberal democracy, the idea that each organ has of what it's supposed to be doing is quite different from what the network is going to see. And so there's a serious problem there in liberal democracy. If you want to have a functional, the reason why the globalists think the way they do is because they see what China is attempting to do. And China is essentially kind of the model for how you would do this. And so the thing is, like, if we're competing with them and they're successful and they're going to be a highly functional technocratic society, then we're sort of forced in one way or another to compete on that basis if we're going to maintain our national sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
And that's just an example. There are other players as well.
Well, so let's run at that. Part of what I took away from the piece of the framework that I resonate with most strongly is, what framing do you have to put on that question for China's success to no longer be a factor? So if I said, I am looking for humanity to get to the next star, right? That's all I care about. I don't care about the United States or the EU owning that. If China is the path to get us there first, right? If they have a decent shot at it, I would support China, right? That's not necessarily something I care about. I'm just throwing it out as an example. That framing takes it's us versus China off the table, right? There are a lot of ways that you can reframe what are the essential elements of civilization that we need to save in such a way that it's a zero-sum game is no longer the game you're playing. And that's where the name came from. Me against you, winner takes all the marbles is what we're playing now. And that's what we called game A. Game B is, if I am not interested in marbles, how would I play game A such that I'm succeeding in my goals and you can continue to be focused on marbles? And
yeah, it's interesting.
So cryptocurrency was an interesting development in that direction. If governments don't control money, which I would argue they shouldn't, because look what they've done with it so far, right? The central bank problem is well documented. And
well, the central banks aren't really controlled by the government.
Well,
they're controlled by private banks.
The central bank problem isn't that they're controlled by government. It's that if you centralize the banking, they will end up owning the government. And that's what we see, right?
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
If you took money out of the hands of the government or the central bank, right? If you decentralize it to the point that it can't be controlled, that's a lot like the gold standard, right? Where anybody who wants to can mine gold or get gold in trade for other things. And it's really hard then to do the things that are leading us down a bad path with money now. And we thought that cryptocurrency, which was, just barely sparking out at that point, was an interesting development in that direction. But as it turns out, if you wrap it in an ETF, you can pretty much find a way to control the whole market on that. So it may or may not work.
Right.
It may evolve past that. But
it looks like Wall Street has figured out how to get their arms around Bitcoin.
Right.
But I don't know. There's still some people who seem to think that there's a way that it could be used to restore faith in. Did you just freeze up? Because it looks like
Yeah,
your image is frozen.
I got a connection. It dumped me out. Bad connection for some reason. So yeah, let's see, where were we? Oh, Bitcoin, right? If it evolves past the current, hey, we think we've got our arms around it, and so it's functioning pretty much as the stock market does. It still might offer a solution to that problem, but I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket anymore.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about it. I don't think someone made an interesting point that was basically like the real power in the world are not going to let Max Kaiser and Stacy to become the leaders of the world, something like that. They're basically like that's not going to happen, right? And on some basic level, I feel like, well, that is sort of the bottom line. You got to be You got to be careful who you kick upstairs, right?
It may be, but it's also an interesting development. Because it shows it, at least just for a minute, it shows a glimpse behind the curtain. The fear in the eyes of the Fed and the SEC when they realized we cannot control Bitcoin, we must kill it, was illuminating. It was like the Luigi of finance.
Yeah.
Right? Did you see? I mean, if you compare the reaction to Luigi killing the CEO of United Healthcare versus the guy who tried to kill Paul Pelosi, right? Nobody
Oh yeah.
that somebody tried to kill Paul Pelosi with a ball peen hammer in his own house, right?
Right. That was a very weird incident.
But you shoot a CEO, all of a sudden we've got 18 cops doing the perp walk with this guy to make sure that he doesn't get anywhere.
Huh.
So that again, that's them showing here's where we're weak. And from a thinking perspective, great. Show us where you're weak. From a feeling perspective, still a tragedy.
Yeah. Well, this is a thought that's a little bit difficult to fully articulate. Let's see if I can get it right. In the process of the audience noticing all of the defects in the leadership, plus the, let's say, general exhaustion of the population. There's just so many metrics that seem to suggest a kind of lack of vitality within the American people.
By design, the
Yeah.
number of things that were flooding the zone is meant to
100.
induce fatigue and paralysis.
That's right. Exactly. So, within that context, it seems that leadership can very easily be convinced that the people don't deserve any help.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
There's a certain number of people who will go along with that premise, which I find astonishing. But hey,
well, there's always someone who feels like they're going to get the table scraps from the Duke.
Right? What is it? Leopards eating faces party.
Leopards eating faces party.
Yeah, somebody posted.
I don't know that.
It's a fantastic meme. Somebody posted years ago. I don't have the source in front of me, but I didn't. A woman laments voting for leopards eating faces party after leopards eat her face. But I didn't think they would eat my face.
Right.
So
yeah, I think the old school one is what the scorpion and the
scorpion and the fox, or scorpion and the fox. Yeah. Right, exactly. So
so then that kind of brings into question the extent to which any kind of critical exercise against whatever the hell it is they're doing this week, whether that's worth it or just completely counterproductive at this point.
Well, as a philosopher, I'm going to say thinking about the problem is always productive, right? Plans are useless, but planning is invaluable. as a cynic, I'm going to say, man, we're not in a strong position to do anything about it.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so so there's a certain uh, um, there's a certain virtue in keeping your powder dry for the moment at which you can do something about it, uh, and
Yeah.
and it's hard to do so when you don't know if that moment's ever going to come. I mean, I do not want to see and be judged by my grandchildren for living through a period in American history where we had internment camps again in Guantanamo Bay and started pulling people off the street because they tweeted something mean about Elon Musk, who was not elected and is not serving in any office or is in charge of the most important office, depending on who you ask. And his private security has been deputized by the U.S. Marshals. So are those secret police? Because they seem to be snatching people off the street and disappearing them. I'm not comfortable with any of those things, right? I'm many red lines past the part of the library where I thought my nation belonged.
Yeah. Well, I guess part of me, has kind of come to the conclusion that we really are watching professional wrestling, and it is largely kayfabe, and that doesn't mean that people aren't getting hurt, but it does mean that it's coordinated. And so each side is going to do the thing that the other side is going to hate the most.
Yeah,
It's going to confirm all of their worst assumptions about the nature of those people.
yeah,
That is their job. Their job. I've been calling Trump the discreditor in chief,
yeah.
for a long time. And I was very active in the Kennedy campaign, and when everyone decided to support, Kennedy's decision to go to Trump, I was like, I don't think so.
I was exactly in the same spot. Right. I felt betrayed by that. I was like, look,
Yeah.
Kennedy, the thing, if I could do one thing to fix American politics, it would be take all the money out of it. If I couldn't do that, my next thing would be get a third party in there. Any third party, any third candidate with a slate of allies behind him to make it a three-way race in as many places as possible, because that would get us out of the math trap of most extreme wins.
Yeah.
But
I feel like the only way it would work is if we had snap elections where the establishment didn't have time to infiltrate and undermine the campaign.
Yeah, well, I'd settle for a bunch of convictions of bribery, but that's not going to happen either.
I mean, again, we're in a situation where our institutions have been corrupted,
right.
And
so
I don't see how to formulate a plan that relies on them.
Yeah, that game has been won. It's broken. There's no point in playing it. So trying to play the red versus blue game is a non-winning proposition. The only thing to do is to try and take the culture somewhere where what they're doing in the red and blue game is unacceptable. I mean, you remember Gary Hart?
Sure, yeah.
Democratic campaign was completely derailed by a picture of him with a girl in a bikini on his lap on his boat, right?
Yep.
Wife saw the picture, and the press had a field day with it, destroyed his career. I would like to return to that level of culture where something like that could destroy a political career instead of, and here's a tape of the president saying, grab him by the pussy. Here's a video of the president mocking a disabled reporter. Here's a video of the president, whatever he's doing next, right? And these are taken as, oh yeah, that's okay. Well, when you
all of these are provided for the purpose of enraging the left.
Yes,
right?
But the culture let them happen, and the
left was a big part of that. The left were, these were the hippies, and the whole counterculture was a left-wing phenomena up until 10 minutes ago. So, in many respects, rock and roll was all about grabbing by the pussy, pretty much,
Sex, drugs,
and
and rock and roll. I know it was
and there were a
where
lot
to
of
live
women
right
who
until I was
were
born.
who were 100% into it,
Yeah.
So it's nothing to be proud of, but it's also definitely a big responsibility for the people on the left to recognize that this is kind of the tail end of the thing that everyone was all excited about in the 60s and what have you. So that our culture took that horrible turn, and everyone thought it was kind of a freedom festival, but in reality, it ultimately ended up enslaving the entire
Well,
society.
when you consider the people who were in their teens and 20s in the 60s are the same people in their 70s and 80s now who refuse to let go of power and let the next generation have a turn. So, my secret hope is that as the boomers die off, we will have a chance to reset the culture. Now, my generation, Generation X, will never get that chance because we are a demographic dip after the boomers. They were too busy having two careers and living it up as double income, no kids, to have a generation as big as they were as follow them, right?
Yeah.
But the next ones, the millennials, are a swing up in population again. So it may be that the bullshit that they're unwilling to put up with from employers, they are also unwilling to put up with from their elected officials. That could be a natural, and that's what I'm actually talking about when I say I hope what we're seeing is an extinction burst of the boomers generation getting their last vitriol out. Red versus blue, fuck you, no fuck you. And that dies with them. And then we get a reset. But I also know that that's kind of hopium. It's not going to happen on its own, right?
I mean, the thing I'm most concerned about in that scenario is what's left over by the time they die off
right.
to work with.
What do we get from the ashes? Right. How
exactly?
Can we keep them from salting the earth on their way out? Because their MO, remember before they were called in the 80s they were called the me generation.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about me. I can do cocaine, go to work and have a 3 martini lunch and woohoo, I ain't never gonna have kids and I'm never settling down. And yeah, those assholes who let ourselves into the house after school, make dinner for ourselves. I'll be home sometime around 9 or 10. Great, thanks.
Well, I think a lot of that was, a byproduct of the increasing demands from corporate existence.
And again, that might be part of what happened in 1971, which is first you had double income, and that was great for people who were living in a single income world. And then you moved the goalposts so that now to buy a house, you need two incomes, right? The All in the Family was one wage earner, one homemaker, still two cars, two kids, a pet, a picket fence, on a single union salary.
Right. But the kid was still living at home in his 30s.
Yeah, that's true. Right. Because, he's a meathead.
Right.
But
still is.
but that model is that model is badly broken, right? And they took the, hey, we've got two jobs or two incomes in one household. We're going to squeeze all the juice out of that, but then we're going to pull up the ladder behind us and leave it as, oh, it takes two incomes to raise a household now, right?
Yeah, and that means that both mom and dad aren't home, and that's why you got the latchkey kid,
right?
Because both mom and dad are getting jerked sideways in order to do whatever the corporate dance is they got to do,
right?
And they want to blow off steam when they have time off.
And because I blame Reagan for firing all the air traffic controllers, right? Union busting was for all that unions have done that I do not agree with, that is not good. They did keep the middle class from getting pulled out of existence. And we
Yeah.
right now are in a spot where the middle class is looking real anemic.
But again, in a circumstance where the West is having to compete with the rest of the world, who essentially have slave labor
Yeah.
in many, or very, very cheap labor,
Right.
and we're supposed to somehow or another maintain our industry in the face of that.
Yeah.
When you have these global connections starting to happen,
Right. You can't you can't play that
can't do
head to
it.
head. You cannot.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Right. So you've got
So
to. So you've got
that's
two
where the
options,
pressure
right?
came from.
Right. So leaving that game, we talked about this a little on email. Leaving that game has two options. You can flip the table, right? Storm out, rage quit. I'm not going to use upward and downward. I'm going to say that's a contraction of the game space, right? I'm reducing the game space to zero by flipping the table. Or you can expand and say, I'm going to let you win that game, or I'm going to play a bigger game such that you're winning this game or playing the way you do does not interfere with the game that I'm playing, which mine is, I want the world to look more like Finland, right? I'm going to start measuring gross national happiness instead of gross national product, which means you do all the tariff whacking you want. That's not the scorecard I'm using anymore. I'm going to find something that works better and is more inclusive and see who wants to play your game and who gets pulled into my game. Because in the network effect of a better game is that players will migrate. So eventually,
in a market of games where people are free to move from one board to another.
right.
The problem that you have is that you have a lot of people who are locked into a game because of Epstein for
Correct.
shorthand, So then it's, how many different mobs and cabals have their agents everywhere to prevent there from being another viable game from showing up.
Right.
It's almost like, if it were a game, it would have to be essentially secret.
Well, and it's a non-trivial problem, but in a lot of the places like Africa, the amount of money that is required to give somebody a ticket out of the game, to give somebody fuck you money to walk out of what they're doing, is ridiculously small compared to US standards. Like $24 a day is life-changing in huge places, huge swaths of population, right? So one theory is we don't go after the US. We let the US stay in game A, right? They're the biggest assholes on the board. Let them be the last ones on that board. And we focus our efforts on how can you get people into constructive games, not destructive games, in the places where the money is the cheapest, right?
That's interesting. Yeah. And it does seem like in general, rebalancing the globe, if we're going to maintain a global economic system, is incredibly important.
Yeah, I theorize that the EU is going to be the next power player. That already what we've done vis-a-vis Russia has put Europe in center stage, where we have demonstrated bad faith. They've got enough, they're in second place behind us, but they've got enough of a head start that I think financially and technologically, they could eclipse us in 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hear very mixed things from the people who are knowledgeable about Europe, and they could be in an awful lot of trouble when it comes to Ukraine if the United States really does stop supporting the war there.
They could, but only if they keep playing the game based on artillery and air force and things that the U.S. leads manufacturing in, but has shown to be faithless in terms of delivering, right? Nobody wants the F-35 anymore because kill switch. And it doesn't have to be a literal kill switch. It can just be you can't get parts and replacement parts and ammunition, right? That shifts the burden to, let's say, Saab, who since the 80s has been working on the premise that every plane is a sensor network. Every plane in the air should be able to use the information from every other plane in the air for targeting solutions. Well, shit, that's the right approach if you're going to drone warfare, isn't it?
100%.
So, in a technological shift, they may have the two things they need, which is enough of a head start and an existential focus. Russia is coming for us through Poland if they get Ukraine. We've got to make sure Ukraine holds the line, for example.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that analysis, but
No, I'm making that up as a if that's the scenario, they may have enough to succeed there, right? So I don't know if they're
it's
actually
certainly
up to it either.
possible. Yeah, it's certainly possible.
I
Um,
have a lot of faith in the kids that I met in Ukraine. They were
hmm,
as bright as students as I have ever dealt with. Their
hmm.
English was impeccable because they were interested in joining the West. Um, we've certainly dashed that hope for the foreseeable future, but it may come back around. But I think that they're well placed to innovate on the battlefield and in business, and well positioned to make Europe their big ally rather than saying, well, we're going to have to buddy up with China.
Hmm. Yeah, I know a lot of commentators think that Europe will have a very hard time being able to come up with the funds and the military hardware in order to pursue a victory in Ukraine to
Yeah.
continue to really support them.
Yeah. Are they
Um,
pricing that in US dollars? Because, our accounting on that's a little funny. $150 million worth of US aid is really old 1980s tech priced at what it goes for now.
150 billion
Yeah.
is what he said he got, but I think they spent more like 250 billion.
Yeah, except that they're valuing 1980s era munitions as if they rolled out of the factory yesterday. This is old stock that we were going to rotate out and mothball or dispose of, and they're charging
Right.
full price premium plus for, right? So I think that the cost for Europe um, to hit parity with that, I mean, Rheinmetall opened a factory in Kiev, so they're producing artillery shells locally, and they said,
Hmm.
well, that won't that make you a target? And CEO of Rheinmetall said, yes, we're installing our own anti-aircraft at the factory.
Interesting.
So I mean,
Huh.
they're going big balls for. We've got an opportunity to pass the leader and take this race.
Wow. Hmm.
Anyway,
Did,
again, it'll be fun to watch in the sense that it's not fun at all because I know people over there and their city is ruined and their friends and family are killed and uh, this is not something that I thought was going to be on my timeline.
yeah, I've got a friend from Ukraine too, and his father passed away shortly after getting out of the country when the war started. And his sister is somewhere, I think, in Italy or something.
No, yeah, it's hard to watch.
Yeah, it's terrible. I think it was an unnecessary, entirely unnecessary war. But
Well, it was necessary from the part of Putin, who said, "This is my last chance. I'm running out of years to put the USSR back together and be in charge of it." So I get
I don't know if that's what he was doing.
he's working on
I
his
think,
timeline, but you're right. There's no valid reason for it to have happened.
yeah, yeah, terrible, terrible,
There's people
terrible
who always say
consequences.
everything happens for a reason. I like to respond, yeah, that doesn't mean anything about what kind of a reason is it.
Right.
It happened for a reason, sure, but it could be a horrible, crappy reason.
Yeah, but there's a whole host of possibilities, and I think that some of the ones here are not really commonly discussed are significant. You know, unfortunately, um, I think one of the big motivation was the encroachment of NATO. I think that is definitely a big factor,
I,
and it didn't really have to happen.
I
Those
hear that.
moves,
I hear that. But
yeah,
NATO is all along Russia's border and still hasn't invaded. So encroachment, and Finland and Sweden are now part of NATO as a result of invading Ukraine. So encroachment, I give no points to.
Well, I think that it's, uh, roughly 4 minutes response time if NATO missiles are positioned in the eastern provinces of Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's very similar to our objection to the missiles down in Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
At the very least, it provided him with the excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I see that argument though. I see that argument paralleling something that Brett said for, you remember when they were talking about mis, dis, and malinformation?
Sure.
All right. So he said that these have been classified as the tools of terrorism. And what that means is mis, dis, and malinformation, which by the way looked like it had been written by a sixth grader, which
right.
I think that they had put an intern on that and said, here, write a one pager on this because we need a statement piece.
That's terrifying in and of itself.
Right. And they put together this word salad meaning nothing, right?
Yeah.
To try and fill the gap of, hey, stop saying things that aren't true or that we don't like, right? So
yeah,
a position the government shouldn't be in anyway, right?
Right.
And his fear
was another fundamental principle of our our Constitution.
And that moved the envelope a bit. And his fear was they're going to start using that as a reason to take away people's civil rights, because if you get to treat them as terrorists, you don't have to give them the same rights you would as citizens under regular criminal law.
Right.
And that was a valid fear, but none of it happened, right? So it was maybe a little overblown. And now the power has shifted to the other side, where for even less than mis, dis, and malinformation, they're grabbing foreign students on a visa, somebody who had a tattoo, who showed up on some list as a gang member, and we don't even have any evidence we can show you about why we thought he was a gang member. And by the way, he had a ironclad judgment from the immigration court saying, do not send him to El Salvador. He has already won that court case, and he had a valid green card, and he was a tradesman, journeyman, or apprentice working on his journeyman, and he was exactly the kind of immigrant that you say you want in this country. Picked him up, disappeared him. Oh, we can't get him back. So they're actually
it's almost as if someone wrote that script to make Trump as clearly as possible precisely what the fears of the left are. Which is not to say that that's not something that happened, right?
Yeah.
It's just to say that this is, unimaginably fits the bill for precisely what everyone on the left was afraid of.
You feared it over here, and then we did it over here. And I'm not convinced that it's all not just orchestrated by the guys with the green to keep us fixated on the field.
That's how I feel about it. I mean, I can't prove it, but I feel like that's what's going on.
Yeah.
I
mean, occasionally Trump says the quiet part out loud, like, it's a great time to get rich in America. I'm crashing the markets so you can buy shit cheap. If you haven't heard it before, there is an expression in finance that is, probably Warren Buffett originated it, which is, it takes 2 serious market downturns to make generational wealth. You need 2 serious crashes.
Wow.
To accumulate enough for generational wealth.
Huh.
So
that's wild. Yeah, that's really interesting.
When I say they're speedrunning it, this is why. I think that's what they're doing, is intentionally trying to break up the company, and the company in this case being the U.S., take all the parts that are of value, burn the rest.
I think that's quite likely the case.
And I think
it's a demolition job.
Well, I think the technocrat movement, which is people who read too much soft sci-fi when they were teenagers, like, Elon, and the whole PayPal mafia, think that they can build a bunker that's secure enough that they can live out the zombie apocalypse in comfort.
Well, it seems like Elon is under the impression that things are so bad that it's worth taking the gambit and going to Mars.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he's basically said like, there's no way we're going to be able to solve the problems here on Earth.
Yeah. Yeah. I was at a you know the show Cosmos, Carl Sagan's show.
Yeah,
They
sure.
relaunched it with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Andrea,
Huh.
who's Carl Sagan's wife. Uh,
Oh, right. Okay.
I saw them do the panel discussion at Comic Con years and years ago when they were just relaunching the show, and somebody asked that question: should we be colonizing Mars to get us out of the risk of being a one planet species, um, or should we be focusing on um, technology to divert an incoming asteroid? And his answer was a society who has the technology to divert an asteroid or to colonize and terraform Mars could fix what we're fucking up on Earth. So
That's a
why
good
don't
point.
we worry about that? And the other two will come along.
Yeah, I think that's good. You know, Brett's brother Eric is really big on the we got to get into space
Yeah.
kind of
I've never
theme.
met Eric in person. I've been at an event where he was, and somebody shot their mouth off and offended him early, and we didn't get to hang out afterwards. So I missed my chance to meet Eric, but I hear a lot of good things about him.
Yeah, I find him very interesting. Maybe there's it's really interesting those brothers. They have such an interesting way of thinking, and they're so alike, and yet they're really quite different. And uh, I feel like I disagree with Eric more fundamentally, but he has takes that are so unusual that it always blows my mind. You know, and
I'm in favor of that.
there's something going on there that's
Yeah,
really interesting.
yeah. We used to call that being read right. Right. I don't need to agree with you everywhere, but I need to know that you've got something worth saying that I can learn from, and I need to know that if I have something worth saying and I share it with you, that you can take that information in instead of being, oh, I'm just here to talk.
I mean, that's the key to good conversation. I think this has been a great conversation.
This has been a fun conversation.
So I think I told my wife that it was going to be about a half hour, about an hour ago,
Oh well,
and
you're probably in trouble now.
I promised her I would help her with something tonight, so I really should go do that.
All right, blame the overage on me. I'll send you
Okay,
the
I'll take
recording.
you up on that.
I'll send you the recording
Hey,
files as soon as they're finished, and
great.
do whatever you like with them. And then
All right, beautiful.
let's talk again when you're ready.
All right, love it.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Have a good
Hey,
night.
have a good night. Bye bye.